Contrary to what you might think, I actually love playing fighting. There is a reason why I'm over level 500 anyways. That does sound more embarrassing actually. However, even if I love this game, there's a few mildly infuriating things about the game that just bug me. Like, they aren't big issues, but rather just things that bother me for some reason. Technically, these are issues, and I think one of them definitely needs to be fixed, but I thought I could compile some minor issues of mine in this video relating to the game. There's not a lot, in fact there's actually technically like 4 here, and I might not be able to cover all of them in specific categories, but these are ones that just fully stand out to me for really no reason. Vinesaf recently got a bit of tweaks to her entire kit, making the sprouts much more effective and removing the snowball aspect of her character. This, in turn, made a much more fun and effective character all around and is an incredibly solid remake of her stuff. Albeit the cute is even more underwhelming, but we don't really need to talk about that. With this, however, was a 5 sprout limit that limited her snowball but made her more effective. Now, since placing new sprouts removes the oldest sprouts from the limit, which can hurt Vinesaf's healing a lot, they added an indicator for how many sprouts you can have. And this indicator is awful. You see, in the middle of your screen are your seeds, the amount of hits you need to get a seed, and the amount of sprouts you have on the field. The last two things are near impossible to see. Fighting is a very chaotic game that could definitely get visually cluttering at times due to the many effects everywhere, which makes seeing these numbers super hard. Now, the amount of petals needed for a seed isn't too bad, you can kind of ignore it as it's not super important. But the max sprouts number is very important, as removing sprouts can impact Vine's healing a ton, with the snowball aspect gone, and placing new sprouts over older sprouts can lessen your healing. The problem is, the number is so goddamn small and transparent. Combined with the clutter of effects like Vinesaf's own ult, makes it super annoying to tell how many sprouts you have. There are times where I have to hold shift and get closer to the screen to tell how many sprouts I have, so I am optimally leveling up my sprouts and not removing them because of the number being super hard to see. You can't just look at all of your sprouts, as Vine needs to be focused on anyone that could dive her at any moment and her positioning. So looking at existing sprouts is just not worth it and not really optimal. Now, don't get me wrong, the number helps a ton, but it's just in the most annoying way possible. The best fix I could give is maybe make a new indicator for it, maybe outline the text better to see it more clearly, or just put it somewhere else on the screen, like near your ammo count or abilities or something like that. It just looks super awkward as a semi-transparent number when it's a super important thing to keep track of a lot of the time to sustain high regeneration. Like, genuinely, please change this. It's super annoying to use and it is bordering on being fully infuriating, but I have faith that it could change soon as it is a fairly recent addition. Well, recent in fighting terms, that is. This one is a small section, but let's talk about skins. Skins look awesome, sound awesome, and sometimes have awesome dialogue. However, they have some unintended side effects at points. From Moetana basically breaking the entire game, to Sunburst Sword having invisible sword ult at one point, skins might be a bit awkward. However, skins can also be mildly infuriating. This is mostly due to either visual differences in moves, or maybe even the sound effects. But one specific case I want to look at is with Shuriken. Shuriken's M2, Stab with the Betrayer, is an incredibly satisfying move to use, and absolute garbage to fight. It is satisfying mostly due to the rewards of a backstab. The normal hit of M2 and the backstab hit of M2 have very distinct and snappy sound effects that completely differentiate the hit done on the target, and this applies to every other Shuriken skin. Except Shuri Suit for some reason. I don't know why, but Shuri Suit's backstab hitbox lacks that snappy stab sound effect and just has a higher pitched hit with the slot machine sound, which is honestly way quieter and much less satisfying. It can also be lost in actual games because of how chaotic some sound effects can be, and in music amongst other elements that make noise, so the backstab signaling can be very hard to hear. There's probably more for other character skins, but I think Shuri Suit is one of the new offenders in this way, and I felt like I should cover it. Let's talk about maps, specifically 2 maps with mildly infuriating problems. Let's start with Bowling Alley. I hate this map and I won't explain why. However, one of the reasons I actually do hate this map is the spawn area. The spawn area for most maps are usually small squares, diamonds, or just an area of the map that is small enough that you can spawn around the same place and don't have to waste time getting to a conquer point or an escort cart. Bowling Alley spawn area is probably the biggest spawn area out of all the playable maps, being a huge rectangle that could differentiate wildly. While I could go on an uncontrolled 11-minute rant on these in the context of competitive fighting, I will give the far shorter version here. Due to the difference in the spawn area, the rollout on Bowling Alley can take a few seconds longer, which for a map that can be very snowball heavy as this, can be super annoying. Yeah, you could take the side entrance, but it has issues of disconnecting you from your team going the other way, and being only decent if you get unlucky spawn placements. And before you ask, no, do not take the conveyor route. It's really bad. I just wish the spawn area was smaller and more consistent instead of being very up and down and inconsistent. I just think for a map like Bowling Alley, it just somewhat infuriates me because of how Bowling Alley is designed. The other map I want to cover is Dark Gauge Cliffs, and for a much smaller and sillier reason. At the last minute, the fire starts shooting out from the grates and will act as some sort of a map hazard. And fortunately, or unfortunately depending on how you see it, it has weird hit detection. The fire geysers do 20 damage every 0.25 seconds, which for a map hazard is actually pretty high. Most map hazards do less damage or just instantly kill you, but the fire actually does a chunk of damage to you in small amounts of time. But don't worry, because the hitbox for it is really awkward. Despite the particles, you can jump through the fire. This is technically good game design, however I want to complain about it because it makes no sense as any type of jump just negates the damage. You need to be stuck to the ground to really take any damage from the fire, which makes it a bit awkward. The hitbox also slightly extends out of the grate it comes from, which mildly infuriates me because the hitbox is technically disjointed for some reason. I don't think another non-insta-kill hazard has that type of distinction, because while Doomspire's Plane and Bread Factory's Crusher have their oddities, the fire is the only damaging hazard to have this slightly odd quirk to it. It's quite fascinating in the most mundane way to me, but it also just makes zero sense because I don't even know why it's like this. This does sound super nitpicky, but why is it designed like this? And it's only Dark Ages fire, man. The most mundane hazard, the most forgettable damage hazard, and a very insignificant one. I could put more clips honestly, but I just wanted to make a short fun video about this type of stuff. If you guys want me to talk about more mildly infuriating things, or you want to talk about them, comment below some other mildly infuriating things, as I am intrigued to hear others' thoughts, and maybe, just maybe, I could make a second video to this, but that is a very small chance that happens. This is just a small selection on my part, so that's all I really have to say now. Thanks for watching, have a good day, sub and like if you want, and yeah, I'm out of here.